That was interesting. Right. I don't know what happened. The whole, everything, all the internet just went out. So technical difficulties, but we back. But yeah, that's the thing. You live it within that 60 to 85% of your 1 rep max. And we're going to go more into that here in the details later in the video, and you want to stick around to the end. So what are some of the factors that can actually go into gaining strength? Because there's only so many things.
Right.
What are the big ones?
And the big ones here are going to be neural drive, so how efficiently your nervous system recruits motor units and synchronizes their activation. You can kind of think of that as how effectively your nervous system communicates with your muscles. So when you're first thinking about picking a weight up off the ground, it all starts in the brain, right? Sending a signal to the muscle, how efficiently that signal gets there, and the strength of that signal. So neural drive is one, and then you got muscle cross-sectional area. So this is the actual size of the muscle, muscle fibers. And so, like, obviously, right, if a muscle fiber is thicker and it contracts, it's going to be able to generate more force.
Which one has more effect, the neural drive or the cross-sectional area? Like, does a big muscle produce more than a small muscle? Or can a smaller muscle actually be stronger than?
And so that's what's interesting, because I would say there's not really a definitive answer for that, because you'll see both sides of the spectrum where, and I think it's to some degree working on your weaknesses. So like for that, we can use the example of a bodybuilder versus compared to like a power lifter in a smaller weight, like who weighs less. They're in because powerlifting is weight class dependent, so they might not want to gain too much size, or too much muscle.
Well, they can't, like if what is it, like 170 pounds is your weight class, then you can't go to 171. You got to weigh in under 170. So you have to be very careful with that.
And so then we come to the point of why is this 170 pound power lifter able to deadlift 600 pounds when you have a 250 pound bodybuilder who just looks massive and maybe his max is 500, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, the bodybuilder has more cross-sectional area, but he can't utilize it as efficiently. When the signal's coming down the chain, he's not efficiently coordinating all those muscle fibers to contract together in one unit, as one piece working together to produce that amount of force.
Yeah, he's just big.
And so they're both super important, and some people are naturally going to have a little more muscle fiber size at birth, and some people are naturally going to have a more efficient nervous system. And I'd say, like, there's ways to train both, and a lot of times the fastest way to get stronger from there is to train your weakness. So if you're a small guy with a super efficient nervous system, like we see, like someone with a really high vertical jump is going to have an efficient nervous system, then he would probably be better off getting a lot of volume and increasing muscle fiber size to further gain strength.
Yeah.
But okay, so we got neural drive, muscle cross-sectional area. Those are two of the most important factors that affect muscle strength that we can manipulate. Okay, so those are going to be the ones we're looking at. Now, as far as other factors that are more naturally determined, we have limb length and tendon insertion points, so which play a major role in leverage. So for instance, someone with long arms, like me and Adam both have long arms, bench press is going to be harder for us than someone with really short arms. But interestingly there, like if you apply that to deadlift, someone with longer arms might have a little advantage, especially if they have short legs, which
short legs, short torso, long arms is going to help a deadlift.
Because they don't have to get as low. They're like, and the top, the less distance you have to move that weight is going to be easier. So that'd be an example of limb lengths, and then an example of tendon insertion points. I guess the classic example you see in the literature and stuff a lot is the bicep tendon insertion point. And so you can imagine if the levers here, say this pen is a 50-pound weight, and I'm doing a dumbbell curl, right? I'm doing a dumbbell curl, and if my tendon insertion is right here and it's pulling up, it's contracting here and pulling from here, it's going to be harder than if it attached another inch higher. Now I have a lot better leverage, right? Conversely, if it attached here, I'd have really good leverage. So those play a big factor, but we can't manipulate them, so we're not really worried about them. You're kind of just stuck with that. Unfortunately, it's not an even playing field in any athletic endeavor, right? But that being said, like maybe
this
like
is part of the game.
Like I would probably be naturally, I would like just starting off naturally, I'd be a better swimmer or track athlete than a power lifter. But I like powerlifting, so
right.
that's what I do.
Longer torso people are going to have an advantage in the pool, but like they're not going to have the advantage in the weight room.
Right. So everyone has strengths and weaknesses in that regard. But so now focusing on how we can increase those strengths through manipulatable variables.
Because you can't change your arm length, you can't change so we have to focus on cross-sectional area and neural drive.
Right. The two biggest things that we can manipulate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and that's why we're getting into the rep range and stuff in the 60 to 85%, because that's where you're going to change those two things. That's the big area.
Yeah.
So like, what's it dependent on?
Okay, so let's dive into both these. So let's say we're increasing muscle cross-sectional area. That's called muscle hypertrophy. Generally, muscles increase not by adding more cells to the muscle, but by increasing the muscle size. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. And so increasing muscle size is mainly dependent upon volume. And what we're talking about with volume would be sets times reps times weight on the bar or whatever it is that you're lifting. So I got an example here. So someone with a squat max, say they have a 1 rep max of 250 pounds, right? And they're trying to so they're choosing between two different rep ranges. They can either do 3 sets of 10 at 75% of their 1RM, 75% of the 250, which would be 185. So 3 sets, 10 repetitions at 185. When you multiply all that, it comes out to 5,550 pounds. So that's the total tonnage they moved throughout
that's a representation of volume. Yeah.
And then, or they could do 8 sets of 3 repetitions at 225 pounds. And which is 90% of their 1 rep max. So we're getting above that 85% intensity range. And that would come out to 5,400 pounds. And so both those to get there's just 150 pounds difference there, but they're pretty much, about 5,500 total pounds that they moved within that squat session on that movement.
And the repetitions are only, on one of those sets there's 30 repetitions, on the other one there's 24.
Mm-hmm. And and both of these repetitions, since muscular hypertrophy is mainly volume dependent, both of these repetition sets and rep schemes are going to produce very similar changes in muscle size. So that's a really important thing to consider. So even though the person who did 8 sets of 3, there's more weight on the bar, and we'll get into the neural drive. They got a little more nervous system. They got a little more benefit to their nervous system doing that. As far as
8 sets of 3
strength.
with 225 got a little bit more neural, but that 3 sets of 10 got more fatigue to the muscles, so it grew more.
Yeah, and in this case, we're even using the same. We'll say this is so close. Say they're both the exact same amount of tons, right? Let's say they're both 5,500. They're gonna get very similar increases in cross-sectional area. And so then you would ask, well, if the 8 sets of 3 gets a little more out of neural, then why don't we just do that? And the answer to that is because it's just not sustainable. We're above that 85% threshold. So there is times to do that, 3s, 2s, 1s, but you can't do it
4 times a year.
Like
if I tried to do that right now, I'd be down for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, and we're saying
smoked.
Right. When we're saying like a set of 3, when he's talking about like 4 times a year, that would be an actual set of 3 where you couldn't get any more reps. That last rep, you were killing yourself for. Right. And so, because there's other times where we train and we do 3s, 2s, and 1s, but they're not actually, we're like leaving our rep in the tank on it. So we're not even going to go there because that'll just open the doorway to a whole different thing. But okay. So going back to this, we have 8 sets of 3 repetitions, right? One, it's not sustainable because the amount of stress you're going to induce from that is going to be just huge. You're not not only are you just beating the crap out of your joints with that much weight, if you did that every week, something like that, 3s, 2s, or 1s every week, you're also a lot of stress is on the nervous system, and then also Yeah, just the time commitment that would take. So like 3 sets of 10 you can do within like 10 minutes, right? And then get the rest, go on to the rest of your workout. Because this is just squats. This is just like the first movement you're starting with. Whereas 8 sets of 3, and you're working at 90% intensity, you're gonna want 5+ minutes between a set.
Yeah, like you
right?
you literally might be there for an hour.
Yeah, just doing your squats.
Yeah.
Just your first set, right? And you still got like 6 other movements you got to do that day. And so it's just not
90% of your 1 rep max for 8 sets of 3 should be so hard that you can barely complete. Like that should almost be undoable.
Right. Yeah, unless you're just so well trained that you have that muscular strength endurance. Yeah, even then it'd be very hard. So that is why, as far as increasing muscle cross-sectional area, that's why the 60 to 85% intensity range is so effective.
Yeah. So that's neural training versus hypertrophy training, or neural training your nerves to move more weight versus training your muscle to get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the 2 big factors that we can manipulate, and then the other one being increasing neural drive. And so there's a lot of different things, kind of changes that happen in the nervous system that can lead to how efficiently it works. And so we kind of outlined three main ones. And so the first one is refining neural pathways, or bettering your motor patterns. So
improving your skill.
We talked about in one of our other topics, I don't remember which one it was, but we talked about you don't want to pollute your motor pattern. You want to keep it really that's fresh, ingrained.
You can get stronger moving poorly, and it's just going to lead with an injury. You get stronger moving in a good movement pattern, we're onto something. But you can definitely move the bar in a bad way and not get anywhere good.
Right. And so this would be like, think of this as technique, as your setup. So say we're using a deadlift, being able to dial in that setup and be able to maintain tension throughout the whole movement from A to B. So that's kind of a whole function of the nervous system in itself, what that feels like, knowing what order to activate all that in, grip the bar, draw yourself into the bar, getting tight through the lats before you're firing through the hips, just where to keep your knees, all this. So that refining your neural pathways. And that's also how beginners, like those beginner gains that people get, right? When they first come in and maybe they put on 50 pounds in a movement in the first month, and it's like, wow, that'd be awesome if we could do that. But that's mainly nervous system. In that short amount of time, they're not getting a whole lot of increased muscle cross-sectional area. It's just a really product of the nervous system, and mainly a product of this part of the nervous system, refining their neural pathways. They just learn how to really properly execute the movement.
Yep.
And then we have improving signal strength. And so this is kind of like how many motor units are recruited for an action, and how efficiently they're sending the signal, or how forcefully they're telling the muscle to contract. And so if you imagine, so a motor unit is basically a motor neuron, so a string of basically a nerve cell, and then all the muscles that it innervates. And so if you imagine, so you got your central nervous system, your brain, where it all starts, sends it down your spinal cord, where you have a bunch of these, and then they branch out all over the body, going into specific muscles. And so you get this one neuron, motor meaning muscle, and then it goes and it will attach to several different muscle fibers. And so, and as far as like how strong you are, it's a big, the nervous system has such a big impact because coordinating all those muscle fibers to contract at the same time and to contract really forcefully. I kind of think of it as conducting a symphony. So you have, right, you might have all the pieces to it and all the musicians who can play their parts, but you have to conduct it just right to get them all playing to that one, like, to all sync it up and hit that crescendo or whatever, which is your 1 rep max strength, right?
I like crescendo. That's my favorite part.
And then, so we got those 2 big things. And then the third one is autogenic inhibition. And so this is kind of a fancy word for autogenic inhibition. So we have these innate protective inhibitory mechanisms, and through training we can learn to override them. And so for example, I think the biggest one where we see change, so we have these things called Golgi tendon organs, which are in the muscle. And so you can imagine a muscle, right, a muscle crosses a joint and it'll attach to 2 different points. And so there's the muscle belly with the actual muscle cells, and then towards the ends they start growing into tendons, and that's how they actually attach to the bone. And between the muscle, as you get closer to the bone, there'll be like more tendons, and then it eventually becomes all tendon.
Yeah.
So there's some overlap there, and that's where that overlap is kind of where the Golgi tendon organs live, and they sense like the tension that's on the muscle, and so and basically they have the power to tell the brain to shut off all motor signaling to that muscle. So they have the power to tell the brain to shut off all input going to that muscle to tell you to contract, and then it won't let you do it.
This is the main reason that like massage, foam rolling, things like that, that you can get a massage, and before you can barely bend down and touch your knees, and then after the massage you can bend down and touch your toes. Is because your body's just like, oh well, okay, we're not gonna inhibit you from moving that distance. It's okay. All of a sudden it gives you trust. You know, it's weird.
And so through training we can eventually reduce or even completely counteract these protective measures, and even to the point where it's no longer even useful. So
yeah, it's of detriment.
So say we have we're doing a bench press, and this pec muscle can support 500 pounds, but the Golgi tendon organ will shut it off at 400.
Yeah.
And you keep training and you keep short. So there's 100 pounds of play in there, right? And so through this mechanism, you keep training. It starts easing up on that, but once it gets to 500, then you might run into trouble, because then you go for a 500-pound bench press and you tear that tendon insertion right off the bone. Because now
you said it perfect right before the show. This is like where people literally tear their tendons and like their muscle right off of the tendon. They rip a ligament or they do something crazy just because they can override that. So
they become so good at it. And then also going back to when you hear like the classic story of like a mother ripping a car door off from a car accident to save her child, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's like, I don't know, I've never looked into research on that, but assuming like that actually has happened, right? That would be because that would not be training induced, but there's just
there's like some innate thing. Like you even said it in there a little bit. Yeah, that's why I say like this is the whole, like when I say like I'm not talking about mindset when I talk about how like your body is strong enough to go and flip over cars, but your brain literally stops you from being able to do so. I'm not talking about some like mindset, like metaphysical type thing. I'm talking about a real thing that we can look at. And this is it. This is what I'm talking about. So your body is so strong, and then but your brain is smart enough to not let you be stupid with it.
Right. So those would be the 3 main ways that we increase neural drive. So those 2 things together are going to be how the 2 biggest manipulatable factors of how we can increase strength. And so I guess we didn't cover, so maybe now going into yours, how rep ranges kind of affect neural drive. Because like we established when we increase muscle cross-sectional area, we want to live within that 60 to 85% range, because it's just a sustainable way to build up enough volume to get these changes.
Yeah, and I think what you're really doing there is you're letting your body learn. You're kind of coaxing it along. We talked about coaxing the gains a few weeks ago, but like I think that's really what's going on there. And if you try to go over that 90%, then you're trying to like force the body into submission. The body doesn't want to be forced into submission. The body wants to learn. It wants to be coaxed along. It doesn't want to be beaten into it. But there's a few different ways. Like when I first started lifting, Bigger, Faster, Stronger was like the biggest thing. The best place for information. We didn't have the internet like it is now. Back then, it was dial-up. You had to, you could do laundry and a few other tasks around the house in the time it took to download a PDF. So, world's a different place. But back then, we basically did we did 5 sets of 5. Then we did 10, 8, 6. So you would do 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and then the next week you would do a set of 10, a set of 8, and a set of 6, and then the last week you do a set of 5, a set of 3, and a set of 1. So that middle week was supposed to be more of a like build muscle phase. And the first week was kind of right in the middle, and then the last week was like, how much weight can we really put on the bar? We just happened to screw it all up when we did it, because we were just like, let's just go hard, let's max out, let's be dumb high school kids. Well, I was the only one really lifting, so it didn't really matter. But there's other programs like 5-3-1. There's really the sets and rep schemes can be whatever you want to throw at the board. But there have been some ones that are like kind of proven to make a little bit more difference. And personally, I like if we are going to do a max out, I like looking at max repetitions versus a true 1 rep max. Because the true 1 rep max doesn't really tell you very much, and like technical failure is basically just going to happen. Mm-hmm. And a max reps we can still calculate something from that.
Right.
So I really like on a max out day, like let's say that we're going to go and we're going to try to test out how much weight we've gained. I like doing just a 1 or 2 reps for each set, and on the last set we just do like a 2 plus or a 3 plus or a 5 plus. We're going for 5, and if we feel good, we'll get 7. If we feel good, we maybe get 8, 9, 10. Just to test out and see where you are rep wise. That's how I really like to do it. But it's still the majority of the time that we're going to spend down there in that 60 to 80% rep range, or like speed reps, like where you're just practicing the weight. Where it's you might do 8 sets of 3, like we were talking about before, but you scale it back and you go 60 to 80% of your 1 rep max, and you maybe divide that out like on the minute. So every minute you're going to do 2 reps, or you're going to do 3 reps for 8 minutes.
Yep. And that's kind of, I think that kind of directly training the nervous system. So you have a really light weight, and instead of, because you're not focusing on weight, you're focusing on movement speed. Mm-hmm. So that would be going back to those 3 ways of increasing neural drive. That would be improving the signal strength. So you're trying to force that signal to come through super strong and move you as fast as possible.
Right. And then on the other side of the coin, we can do like kind of a rest pause scenario where maybe we do 8 sets with 60% of our 1 rep max, and but we only give ourselves 20 seconds of rest. And so we're just like, well, let's say we give 10 seconds of work, 20 seconds of rest, and we do that for 8 sets. You're going to be torched, right?
Quick way to get a bunch of volume in, and you're going to be torched, but you'll be able to recover from it a lot more effectively than even like 1 set of 3.
Yeah. Basically, no neural drive, like very little lowered with a ton of fatigue. So you make that muscle fatigue, and you can then gain muscle out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It doesn't beat up the tendons and joints as much as well.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. So now, let's go through like athlete, powerlifter, strongman, general population. Personally, I look at it all the same. Like I look at, like, you can tell me your thoughts on this, but I look at everybody the same. Like, everybody's an athlete, and everybody, like, I know some people don't identify as an athlete. I don't care. Like you're gonna train. The fundamentals or the principles of training you're going to apply to an NFL receiver as you would to a sumo wrestler, as you would to a grandma, as you would the fundamentals.
And that's what a lot of people don't realize is we're all working with human bodies here, and so we're a lot more similar than we are different. And so I think a lot of people, like our clients, would be kind of surprised in that the programs that they're on don't look a whole lot different as the ones that like I saw going on at Iowa football, right? The numbers are a lot different, but the general core of it and how it's structured and what it's based on is all very similar.
Yeah, and if you think about the goals of what people are actually going for, you have to match that neural drive with that cross-sectional area, because everybody basically wants that. Like, let's say people want tone, right? Mm-hmm. What normal people think of as tone, like general population thinks of as tone is like, oh, how do my triceps look? How my bicep look? Versus tone, like we think of it as a totally different deal. But to get that tone, like the general population thinks of it, we need a decent layer of muscle tissue under the skin, right?
Yeah, right.
So we need that volume training. We need that kind of hypertrophy type stuff.
Coupled with having just a low body fat percent, so you can actually see what's.
But if you want to beat your kids in a one-on-one game of basketball, we got to be able to throw down. So we need some neural drive too. So we got to focus on that. If you look at a sport like football, where we want the guys to be big and strong, then they're going to have to match that. They're going to have to balance that out too.
Right. Yeah. They're going to be big and strong, but also explosive in some positions more than others. Yeah.
And I think powerlifting is fairly similar. But anyway, where was I going with that? So athlete, powerlifter, strongman, general population, we're all basically, I think that you nailed it. Like, we have way more similarities than we do differences. Like, way, way more. It's like almost metaphorical for other things. But is there any like huge surprises on that programming here that you've seen so far that you never saw before? Like,
and there's a lot of stuff I never saw before, but not necessarily surprised. Oh, rep range rise? Not really. I mean, No, I don't think so.
I didn't think so either. There's some that like people come in there like, why would we do a 2, 2, 2, 2, 5?
Right, and so that's I explain that to people a lot. So basically, when we're doing that, that'd be more of a strength block. We're essentially warming up, dialing in technique on those first 4 sets of 2. These are sets of 2 that we want to be lower than that set of 5. So you're working your way up, dialing in your form, saving your energy for that one big set of 5, where you're actually getting really close to like your 85% on that set of 5. So 85% is about the percent of your 1 rep maximum that you can do 5 times of your true 1 rep max.
That's
and
the
do
big
a
thing
true 5 rep time. Whereas if we did 4 sets of 5, that last set of 5 is not going to be as high as the 1 set of 5 at the end of all those 2s. And so you can kind of think of that as a strength training modality of increasing, I guess, neural strength through neural drive, because that set of 5 is going to be the highest it can be, and so you'll be basically conducting those motor units in the most specific way to a 1 rep max.
Yeah.
So like
within the lift that you're doing,
So and so that would be kind of the reason too that you would go like 1 to 3 reps, because like that. And going back to the bodybuilder versus powerlifter, they might have all the size there, but then if they wanted to get stronger, they would have to practice it now, coordinating all those motor units, those muscle cells to work together, to contract together forcefully. And so by doing like 3s, 2s, and 1s, going outside of that, the way we had generally programmed them, they wouldn't be actual 3s, 2s, and 1s, but they would be higher than what your 85% would be. And so then you're using all those motor units at the same time, so you're effectively teaching them how to work together at the same time. Whereas if you're at like 70% intensity, you're not really getting a lot of nervous input through like improving signal strength that much, because you don't have all the pieces there to coordinate at a time. The stimulus isn't high enough to force you to have to activate all those at the same time. You can't, in fact, if the weight's at 70%, you can't use all your muscle fibers at once. Your body won't, just like when I lift up this pencil, I can't train all my muscle fibers unless I did it a million times, and then they fatigue. So that would be kind of the reason. And speaking, like, that's why sets of 5 are really
that's
loved
why
in the strength and conditioning community, because they're kind of right in between that, right at the height of that maintainable, kind of sustainable rep range, but you're still getting a lot of neural activation that will carry over to your 1 rep max display of your strength.
4, 5, and 6 are really good numbers for that, like, kind of medium point. Like anybody starting out, like somebody starting out in the gym should probably stay at that 4, 5, 6 on most of their exercises, unless they're going for hypertrophy in a certain area, or they're going for endurance of the muscle, like a rotator cuff exercise, for instance. You would go a little bit higher rep on that, because you're focusing on something different. But if people start like beginners in your first 4 months, and maybe even down the line too, you would reuse this, but especially in your first 4 months, like, you should basically be concentrating most of your efforts into that rep range of 4, 5, 6. And then once we get past that, then we can start working on, do you go to a little bit heavier with the your 1s, 2s, and 3s, and or are we focusing more towards your 8 to 12 rep range? I personally hate 12 rep ranges because they're miserable. But we used to have to do stuff like that in college. Our coach would make us do like rear foot elbows, split squats, like 20 on each leg.
Yeah.
For 4 sets. And you barely walk. You can barely walk out of the workout, and you can barely walk around for like a week. And we can do conditioning. But that's why the 4, 5. That's why a lot of things are that 4, 5, 6. And once you get into 8, then you're looking at more like fatiguing the muscle a little bit, and getting a little bit more volume with a little less weight. And when we get into 1s, that's a totally different scenario. I think people should be careful with 1 reps.
Yeah, especially if you're not in a sport that requires you to display your 1 rep strength, because also at the higher intensities, going along with sustainability, especially 3s, 2s, and 1s, you're a lot more likely to get injured, because you're handling such a heavy load where a little mistake is a lot less likely to be able
Yeah.
to be correctable within a set. So everything has to just be dialed in perfectly. There's not a whole lot of reason to do it for general population. True 1, 2, or 3. Like we'll use threes on like a Turkish get up, but that's not a true 3, right? It's like
that's because Turkish get ups have like 8 reps within
right.
1 repetition. Yeah. I didn't tell you about this, but I was talking with a high school kid this last weekend, and apparently at their school they just max out all the time, like every couple weeks.
Yeah.
And it's always a true rep max.
A true rep max. Yeah.
Or a true 1 rep.
So luckily. They can get away with it at that age with it, but like not that it's definitely not the most. I'm saying luckily, like for them that they're not
you're trying to do that
because it's not the most effective way to train, but like anyone else who is not going through puberty and just growing substantially in that COVID period
or on drugs.
Is
you're 45 years old with a regular job, and I don't even care if you sleep 12 hours a day. That's still going to be rough.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, there's a lot of different rep schemes you can use. You could do 2, 2, 2, 2, 5. There we're going for more of a neural drive. You could do 3 sets of 8. There we're going for like an endurance thing, or we're trying to increase the size of the muscle. But for the majority of the lifts that you do, the big thing that we want to get across is the reasoning behind why you would stay between that 60 and 80%. And it's like when you start getting, or 60 to 85%, as we started getting into 90s, we're asking for technical failure. We're asking for the body to not recover the way that it should. We're asking for it to not perform with the qualities that we're actually trying to get out of it. It's I won't say dangerous place to play in, but it's definitely, you better know what you're doing once you get up into there. And I mean, you better know what you're doing with your body, because it's not a dangerous place to play, but you could definitely get yourself hurt real quick.
For sure.
Yeah. And I don't think you're doing yourself any favors performance-wise. Anything else you want to get across?
No, I hit all my points there.
Okay. I think we basically covered everything that we were going to say, but yeah, live within that 60 to 85% rep range. Even if you have 10 reps, like if 250, that was 75%, wasn't it? So if you can, let's say you can bench 200 pounds, you need to stay somewhere between 60 and 85%. So you need to stay, what is that, 200 pounds? So you need to stay at 120. Yeah. Like you can bench 200, but 120 is all you're going to do. That's where you should.
170.
Yeah, 120 to 170 is where you should live the majority of the time. It's just going to be better for the long haul. You're actually going to have better results from it. You're going to get more muscle and you're going to get more strength by doing it that way. Good to jump off?
Yep.
Good if you finish it up. All right, thanks guys for watching. Please slap the share button, send us out to everybody you know. Tell us what you think, right in the comments section. This was good. This is good. I wish I wouldn't even have talked. We should have just let you do this whole thing. But anyway, thanks guys. We'll see you tomorrow.